Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. I'm Frater Eleftheria, and well, my last video on the four princes of evil has been getting a lot of attention, a lot of reactions, a lot of them really supportive, which is great, but some of them a bit trollish. Perhaps I've got some bots swarming the video, I don't know. And then others where people have raised questions or uncertainties about exactly what I'm doing in this ritual or why I'm doing it, which is understandable if you've come to this channel from elsewhere and you're not very familiar with esoteric ideas. It can seem quite unusual, the sorts of things that I'm talking about in that video. So the purpose of this video is to provide a bit more of a background, a bit more of a context for the Four Princes of Evil video that I did last week. I'm going to tell you all about what the Book of Abramelon is, what its significance is, the rituals that are contained within it, and then my work with the Book of Abramelon and similar texts to get me to a point where I decided to do the evocation of the Four Princes of Evil and why I did it and what the inner meaning of that is beyond what it looks like superficially, which might seem a bit fantastical. So that's all of the things I'm going to cover tonight and go deeply as well into the history of this particular type of magical working and also the nature of the demonic realm and some other kind of interesting little things as well that will help to shed light on all of this sort of thing, and particularly on that video that I did last week. So let's get straight to it. So this magical operation that I performed, the evoking of the four princes of evil and then the 8 sub-princes and then the servient spirits and familiar spirits under them, is not just something that I made up. It's actually something that's taken straight from a quite well-known text, that is the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, which is often shortened to the Book of Abramelon. It dates back to the 1300s or 1400s AD, and it's quite well known and well referred to in modern occult circles, particularly in Thelema, within that community. And also the Golden Dawn refers to it quite a bit. This is something which Samuel Mathers, the one-time head of the Golden Dawn, was quite enthusiastic about. He actually translated a version of the Book of Abramelon, and I have that translation here. This is a 1970s edition. It's not considered to be the best translation of the text in this day and age, but it's still pretty decent, and it just goes to show that it was quite an important text to the Western esoteric tradition, and still is to this day. And in wider popular culture, it's more well known today because of the movie A Dark Song, which is about the Abramelin Operation. But the way that A Dark Song represented the Abramelin Operation is not quite accurate. I know Jason Louv would have some passionate opinions about that as well. But it's at least popularized the Abramelin Operation in a way that it wasn't popularized before. So what is the Book of Abramelon, or more specifically, what are the kinds of magic that it teaches you to use? And really, the types of magic that you do with the Book of Abramelon can be classed into one of two categories. There's one magical operation that you do first, which is the operation to attain knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel, and I'll explain what that means. And then once you've done that, there's a process whereby, having established contact with your holy guardian angel, you ask the holy guardian angel for a ritual to help you work with the Abramelin spirits. And then you construct a series of talismanic word squares or letter squares, the Abramelon squares, which enable you to do certain types of practical magic empowered by the Abramelon spirits. And then before you can use them effectively, or many would say use them at all, at your own peril, you need to evoke the 4 princes of evil and their servient spirits and bind them and withstand their tests in order for them to then work through the squares to help you use the Abramelon squares. And so it is that operation to bind the 4 princes of evil and their servient spirits, etc., that really forms the second type of magic within the book of Abramelon. The working to attain knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel, what that's talking about, knowledge and conversation means some kind of a revelatory experience, or a contact experience, or a mystical union even with a divine being. And that divine being is the holy guardian angel. Some people say it's your higher self. Some people say it's the Atman, the divine within. Some people say that it's an external entity that's been assigned to you, like a guardian angel in the traditional sense. It's really a combination of all of those. But certainly by the time you've achieved knowledge and conversation, the guardian angel, the holy guardian angel, has become integrated into you and really represents the divine aspect of your nature and some of the things that go along with that. But there's more than one working to attain knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel. The operation within the book of Abramelon is one, but there's also a technique given in a book called Liber Samekh, another given in a book called Liber 8, and the ritual from the magical papyri known as the headless ritual, which was later adapted into the bornless ritual, is regarded as a method for attaining knowledge and conversation as well. So for that part of it, at least, that first part of it, there's more than one way of doing it. And so I had all this background knowledge and I had experience of these types of magic before I undertook the working with the 4 princes of evil. It's not something that I did on a whim. And so that's important to establish, to understand why I would do something so foolhardy in the first place. It was really the culmination of a process that began with some earlier magical operations of mine. Chief among them, the Samekh Working. So in 2013, I decided to embark on my own attempt at attaining knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel. And my chosen method for doing that was using Liber Samekh, with a few modifications inspired by the Book of Abramelon and by Liber 8. And I spent some months doing the ritual in Liber Samekh once a day, eventually multiple times a day, until I attained knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel. And I've done a couple of videos on that, which I'm happy to link in the description below for more information, that working that I did. And I've also done a video introducing the Book of Abramelon, which I can also link in the description below if you want more information on either of those topics. So anyway, my Samekh working was a success. And then the thing about Liber Samekh is there's no equivalent to the binding of the 4 princes of evil, like there is in the Book of Abramelon. There's, well, it's a matter of debate whether there's anything that serves the same function in Liber Samekh. While I was doing Liber Samekh, and indeed while I was doing the evoking of the four princes of evil, I was a member of the Ordo Templi Orientis, and one of my brethren in the OTO once said that during Samekh, at the end of the Samekh ritual, there's a kind of mini long dark night of the soul that lasts for 3 days, and that represents the binding of the four princes of evil, if you can move through that successfully. And when I completed my own Samekh working, I did indeed have a little mini existential crisis, which lasted for a few days before the angel finally manifested itself to me and gave me that beautiful spiritual experience. So I felt that I had, for all intents and purposes, done something in my magical path that was equivalent to facing the four princes of evil. And I did eventually revise my views on that, but I'll get to that later. So after knowledge and conversation, I called upon my holy guardian angel again, and this time asked for a ritual for the use of the Abramelon squares and the conjuring of the Abramelon spirits. And the angel gave me this. And then in this point in my magical life, I also went to work constructing the Abramelon squares, and it was quite a labor, I must say. You might have seen the image that I included in my previous video. I briefly flashed it on the screen of the completed Abramelon squares all laid out on the floor. On the left-hand side of that photo, there is a chair for reference of the scale of this. But anyway, I created the squares, and I eventually did use them in the following year or 2 years after I made them. Even though I technically wasn't supposed to, I kind of thought that I had done the necessary work because of what this brother had said about the 3 days of darkness being equivalent to facing the princes of evil. So I did use the Abramelon squares for practical magic on a number of occasions, and I have to say I got mixed results. When they worked, they really worked. Definitely the most powerful form of practical magic that I think I've done. But there was a very low success rate compared to other forms of practical magic that I've done. So a low hit rate compared to other forms of magic, but when it hits, it really hits. But the way that the Abramelon magic worked was kind of glitchy, which eventually got me wondering whether I had really activated the squares correctly. And I was also thinking about the suspicion that I had that the 3 days of existential dread that I had following my completion of the Samekh working, it didn't really accomplish the level or depth of psychological transformation that I felt was necessary after Samekh, and which might be achieved through something like the four princes of evil working. So all this got me thinking that maybe I do need to evoke the princes and bind them after all. Eventually, during another magical operation, this time to communicate with the angel Abramelon, Abramelon told me that I did indeed need to face the four princes of evil. This was actually part of the story that I had forgotten about before I prepared for my last video by going through my magical journals. It was quite a insight to realize that Abramelon was the catalyst for facing the four princes of evil, and ultimately for being reconciled with Christ after having animosity towards Christ for so many years before. which completely changed the direction of my life. And it was because of the intervention of the angel Abramelon, who has been getting a lot of attention in the world recently. But anyway, all of that kind of forms the background to the lead up to me evoking the four princes of evil. This was not the first time that I had dealt with demonic entities either. When I was younger, I did some magic using the Ars Goetia. And so, I'd had some experience of demons before. I wasn't going into this operation with no experience of that world. And, since I've done the Abramelin operation with the four princes, I've learnt a lot more about the demonic realm and studied it more, learned what those beings are really like, how dangerous they are, and how important it is to avoid them. But that's helped me to contextualize a lot of what I was experiencing during that operation. So, when I would make little comments as I was reading my journal from my last video, that was me bringing that knowledge to bear. That is some of the context of my Abramelin working with the four princes. I feel at this point I should explain a bit more about what it's like to experience this ritual. So when I say I'm calling the four princes of evil, I don't mean that a little man with a pitchfork and a tail appears in front of me and starts talking to me, and I'm seeing things like that and hearing things like that. That's not how ceremonial magic works. What will happen is you enter an altered state of consciousness. You might get some psychosomatic effects. You will often close your eyes and see imagery in your mind's eye, and you won't so much hear voices, but you will receive thoughts into your head that aren't your own, which is like a form of communication with you. And that is the way that you are able to perceive the demon. Otherwise, it is just a disembodied presence in the room. So I wanted to clear that up as well, in case there's any doubt about that. And I want to just talk a little bit about what I mean when I say that I evoked Satan and Lucifer, etc., and made them submit to me. Some people, and I don't know if it was just a bot, but some people seem to think that I meant this literally, like the literal devil is now my servant, is under my magical power, like in an objective way. That's not what I'm talking about here. And if that were true, then everything that belonged to Satan would now belong to me, and I'd be the prince of this world. I'd have all of Hollywood and the US Congress at my command. But that's not the case. I still need to pay my mortgage. I still need to work 40 hours a week for somebody else. I'm definitely not any sort of prince of this world. I'm just like everybody else. So that's not what I mean when I say that Satan has submitted to my will. And I don't mean it necessarily in like a way of servitude of a spirit either. What I really mean is there was a contest of two wills in a particular space, and one came out to be the dominant one, which was mine, within a particular space. And that space was my own mind, the inner territory of my own psychology. So that's really what we're talking about here. The thing that you need to understand about the demons is they've got both an internal and an external aspect to them. So, for example, you can have a demon associated with the sin of wrath, more commonly known as anger. We can think of anger behaving like an external force. You think of a mob, an angry mob that turns into an out of control riot and just tears through a city, destroying everything. Or you think of the way that tensions between nations can boil over into a state of war, and all of the kinds of atrocities that follow on from that. Or even the online comments section of a particular platform can deteriorate or blow up into a flame war as people get offended by something and just become hysterical. So all of these are examples of anger acting like an uncontrollable force of nature, like a hurricane or a wildfire or a tsunami. And it really feels in those situations that it's like a massive force with a life of its own that the individual is powerless to control. So that's one aspect to the demonic entity. It embodies one of these forces that acts in the world. Yet we also carry the psychological seeds of these different vices within us. We carry the seed of anger within us. A little bit of the demon of anger lives inside of us. And when the external demon can forge a link with that internal demon, then it gets a foothold, and then that force of nature can overwhelm us and gain control of us. In these moments, feelings such as anger override our rational mind. They override even our conscious awareness, and we lose control of ourselves to something else. And we lose the essence of what we truly are to something else. And we submit to the demon, not the other way around. And so when we get our anger under control, when we do shadow work, when we gain control of our own psyche, we're turning the tables and we are making the demon, at least within the territory of our own consciousness, our own subjective world, we are making the demon submit to us. And that is the purpose of binding the four princes of evil. But theoretically, going through that process also means you're better able to compel the demons to do things for you as an operation of practical magic, which is sort of the rationale behind the Abramelin squares and the technique for their use. So one very good question that also came out of this was, why depend on the angel? Why rely so heavily on an angel to help you do this? And it's a good question, and there's a couple of reasons for this. First of all, because as I said, the holy guardian angel represents the divine part of our own nature. It's not just any angel that you're calling upon. It's really you. It's really the core of who you truly are, the closest to God, the most like God, and that's powerful. That's more than just relying on some other being for help. Secondly, this kind of formula of appealing to an angel or appealing to God as a human in order to command demons is something that is quite common in the grimoires and the magical books of medieval Europe. It's really a technique which was popularized by the so-called Solomonic tradition of practical magic. So a lot of the magical grimoires, which involve the binding and commanding of demons, trace their origins back to the legend of King Solomon. And in this legend of Solomon, Solomon is said to have been given a magic ring by the Archangel Michael, which he can then use to command demons. And he uses the ring to command demons to do things which are in accordance with God's will, such as building the first temple So the whole rationale here is that in the medieval ceremonial magician's mind, working with demons was justified because you were calling upon the power of God first before commanding them, so that they could only serve godly purposes. And so, and that's, you know, you can start to poke holes in that, in that rationale. Um, but that's sort of made its way, that formulaic way of binding and commanding demons has made its way into the Book of Abramelon. And so, yeah, the rationale is, if you can call upon a higher power, such as God or the angel, which is perhaps holier than you, perhaps more powerful than you, then you can much more easily achieve this compulsion of the demons. So, this is the classic. If you want to make someone do what you want them to do, you appeal to a higher authority. So think about, an example of a modern day demon, the Karen. I'm only half joking. If you're somebody who's working in retail and you're confronted by a Karen who is being very obnoxious and rude and questioning the quality of your work, you can confront them yourself and then be accused of talking back and all of that. Or you can say, I've just spoken to my manager and my manager says X, Y, and Z, therefore you need to leave now. Or we're going to call the police, another appeal to a higher authority. And then the Karen backs off. So it's the same principle when you're calling upon angels while you're working with demons, because of course, demons are deceptive and they are treacherous, and they're always looking for little ways of undermining you. So that's the importance of having the power of God or an angel in these medieval forms of magic. Another comment that I got was that it seemed like, in spite of the things that I was saying that were negative about demons, that the Abramelin demons were actually helping me. They were pointing out personality traits that were negative, which I then had an opportunity to overcome, to be a better, more integrated, more wholesome person. And there's some truth to this. I think there's a bit more nuance in there about what the demons might have really been trying to do. But let's look at that for a moment. Why does it seem like a demon can be doing something that is beneficial to you or helping you? Well, there's really one of two reasons for this. One is, as I've just explained, they're being compelled by God or an angel to be truthful in the knowledge that they give, or to do right by you and to do what you ask. So they, in that case, because of the way that the great chain of being works, which is the kind of the spiritual paradigm that all of these books draws upon, the demons then have to obey you. But then there's another reason why demons might tell you things that seem quite helpful at times, and that is because they will often be just helpful enough to make it seem like they're on your side, and they're really not so bad. But it's really deception, because ultimately they're only telling you as much as will serve their own self-interest and hiding other things from you. Sometimes they're hiding a little bit of untruth in there as well, just to throw you off eventually. And sometimes they're packaging something as something that looks good, but which ultimately is not going to be of benefit to humanity, and is going to ultimately serve destructive ends. And to illustrate this, we have to kind of get outside of the paradigm of working with demons in a way that invokes the power of God. As a kind of example, we need to look at people who call upon demons without any protection, without any compulsion, just to have a free and open relationship with them and communication with them. These are the theistic Satanists. And there are people who practice this as a form of religion. They're not working with demons because they're trying to be dark or sinister or edgy, like a lot of young people are who are dabbling in the occult. And I was guilty of this as well. Back in my days of having long black hair and wearing my Iron Maiden t-shirt everywhere. For these theistic Satanists, working with demons is packaged as just like another benign alternative spiritual practice. And working with these demons, communicating with these demons, they get told certain types of things, which frequently include things like how to feel more empowered and independent, how to express desires which have previously been repressed, and to express those without any feelings of shame or guilt, how to gain material success in life, facing their dark side, penetrating the darker side of their personality to heal that and integrate their shadow, which is a noble cause. But so long as the shadow can't gain the upper hand over you in other ways, if you're inviting it to do so in other ways that you're living your life. And then, another common thing that they say is that they want to help free you from the shackles of the Abrahamic religions and the horrible moral dogmas of Abrahamic religion. And so those are common themes that emerge. And there's some things that are noteworthy about that. It's all very self-centered. It's all about what can you do to improve your situation for what's best for you, and disregard other forms of morality, which might encourage you to think about other people as much as yourself, which might encourage you to sacrifice your comfort or even your life for a greater purpose, which might, encourage you to see value in traditions and structures that create order and harmony between people, and serve a purpose that is greater than your own fulfillment of desire, and to worship God. All of that is missing from the advice that these demons give. And so at first it looks like it almost comes across as like a self-helpy type doctrine that these demons are teaching to the theistic Satanists, but it lacks spiritual depth, and it fails to establish a connection with true divinity. If you follow the advice of these demons, then over a long enough time period, you'll find that you adopt a lifestyle that just ends with a hollow existence where you're trapped in an endless montage of materialism and craving and solipsism. You will end up living in a very small world where it's all about you, and there's nothing greater to even register in your mind. A very lonely and meaningless existence. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is that you will end up in egoism, addiction, and self-destruction, to put it mildly. If you don't have that connection with God, then that's where you're going to end up. And if you want a test case for what civilization will look like after 50 years of people living a kind of lifestyle, living by the sort of ethos that is promoted by these demons, look no further than modern Western society. We are now a society in a state of utter decay. The birth rate is plummeting. The divorce rate is at an all-time high. People just want to instantly gratify every desire, no matter how destructive to ourselves or others it is. Everyone's atomized and divided against each other. Common decency has all but disappeared, like just manners. People no longer believe in anything. They don't want to serve any sort of common good. There's all this selfish behavior, all this entitled behavior, and social cohesion is completely breaking down. So that is where the demonic path will lead you, even if it seems really, really appealing and even positive in a superficial way. And that is why it's so important that if you do have an encounter with a demon and it does tell you something which seems like it might be true, you have to test it. You have to invoke the name of God and ask it if it's really telling you the truth. So hopefully that will help to contextualize some of the way that I related to the Abramelin demons, whether they were helpful or whether they really were negative presences. That will help to contextualize it a lot. Some other questions that I got in response to this video was I in the OTO and the AA at the time that I did this operation? Yes, I was. Have I ever used substances in my rituals to establish the sort of contact with these entities and get the communication with these entities? No. The answer is no. I have never had that as part of my practice, ever. It's, yeah, I mean, I respect that there are some shamanic cultures which legitimately use this, and that's fine, but it's never been my jam. I don't feel like I need it, and I feel like it would, if anything, it would just cloud my visionary experiences. But then again, I've never tried it, so I don't know. But it's just not my jam. And people were asking about the contract, the oath that I got the spirits to sign. I think I do have it sitting around somewhere. I've got to dig it up. But perhaps that'll be a members only thing. Perhaps it'll be something that I just share with my members on the new tier of YouTube membership that I've created, the Scryer tier. If people start to join that. So yeah, that's all that I really wanted to say, to contextualize and give more information on that operation of the 4 princes. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe to my channel to support my work. And if you want to support me further, hit join or thanks down below. And also I've got a new line of merch. It's clothing items with Eleftheria in Greek across the front. It's the spelling of my magical name, also the way that word is spelt on the Roswell wreckage, alleged Roswell wreckage. So it's a reference to that synchronicity, and kind of like I guess I want to make it a meme of this channel. So if that's something that you're interested in as a way of supporting me, I'll leave a link in the description below for my merch store. But anyway, again, I hope this video has helped you to understand some of what I was touching on in my previous video on the 4 princes of evil. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next time.